Psalms 51 pretty much will be in there and talking about David. In 2 Samuel 12, verse 17, I'll just, you don't have to look that up. Then Nathan said to David, "You are the man." Then David said to Nathan, "I have sinned against the Lord." So today, we're going to talk about finding God when I sin. What do we like to do a lot of times when you do something wrong that you shouldn't do?
Try to hide it or put it out on side.
Try to hide it, like when you were smaller and were a kid, you try to avoid your parents, or you try to put it aside, you try to do something so that you're not found out, right?
Blame somebody else.
It's I didn't do it. Yeah, must have been my sister.
Well, they told me too.
Yeah, adults do it as well. Definitely. Do what?
Look over it.
Look up, say it's okay. Yeah, I can do what I want. Definitely. So, and why did he fall? Say again? Sin? Yep. Lust of the flesh, you gave in to, yeah.
And not just the lust of the flesh, the murder of the husband.
Right, he used that to cover up, exactly, yeah, so know that a lot of things are going on. And that's what another point was going to get. When you sin, do you do other things to cover that up sometimes? Sure. So you try to make it by seeming like it didn't happen, or distancing yourself from the situation, or like David, you do some other things to try to cover it up so that it won't be found out. But what can we rest assured that it will be found out?
Try to reassure,
Sin of fact.
try to reassure yourself, oh, this is not gonna happen anymore.
Right.
I'm not gonna do this anymore, so.
Well, and God knows. I mean, no matter how much you try to hide it from man, God knows.
God knows, yeah.
Well, as he said, we say we're not gonna do it anymore, we keep going back to the same playgrounds and the same,
That's right.
in the same environments we've always gone to. So.
You're keeping yourself in the same situation.
Yourself in the same situation.
So you gotta be very careful there. David was a warrior. It was spring and he was supposed to be off to war. So is that another lesson we can learn?
We need to be where we are.
We need to be where we're supposed to be, doing what we're supposed to be doing. Yeah. Sir?
Be responsible.
Be responsible, definitely. And will that help us in our everyday lives as well? Keeps us from doing things we shouldn't do.
We need to take responsibility for our own actions, no matter what the, consequences may be, but I found out when I do that, they usually come out better anyway, if you take responsibility for your own actions.
Correct, yeah, definitely.
So, then if you wait till you're found out.
And we'll get to talking more about that, but that's something a lot of people don't want to do, is take responsibility for themselves, right?
Well, a lot of people never learn responsibility.
True. And I think it starts from kids and parents, teaching children responsibility, definitely. Instead, David was at home watching a woman bathe from his rooftop. Looking simply wasn't enough. He had to have her. The bad news is she ends up pregnant. And the worst news is the pregnancy can't be pinned on Bathsheba's husband, because he is where David should have been, at war. David schemes and plans, and the drama ends with Bathsheba's husband being murdered. Months pass and David is back to normal, or so he thinks.
Another thing, David was the king. Remember that in this situation, he was the king. If he had said to one of his people, "You come here," they would go, because if they didn't by morning, their head might be gone.
Right, I mean, she was
He had the authority to do that.
right.
And so, we, a lot of times, especially older people, and they blame it all on Bathsheba. Well, you gotta think about it. She was trying to survive too.
And she was doing what they normally did, right? I mean, David shouldn't have been up on the roof, at that time of day.
And then he should have been soldiers.
So from what I understand, the reason I said that, and correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody knows any more of the history, but from what I understand, they used to take baths up on the roofs, right? Because that was and that was when the men were at work, so, a place that they took baths, so, he shouldn't have been up there, looking out over the city.
And all through the Bible, it talks about, I don't know what it's on, I forgot the word, it's in the fruit of the Spirit. Where you're strong enough. Oh, I'll think of it in a minute.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
But David,
Self-control.
second,
Self-control.
self-control.
Yes, and that, self-control, you're even supposed to have self-control in that area of your life.
Right.
That's, and if you don't, you're not serving, you're sinning.
And self-control in many aspects of our life, not just, that area, but, because we can really get out of hand in any little part of our life if we overemphasize in one part of it. It gives us not a balance. So you do have to have self-control. So David schemes and plans, and the drama ends with Bathsheba's husband being murdered, as we said. Months pass, and David thinks everything is normal, or so he thinks. Then a visit from the prophet reminds him of his grave era and the story about a man's small lamb brings him to his knees as he recognizes that the story is about him. So, at some point in our lives, we all have sinned. Something has happened that has caused us to see our sin and led us to a realization that we have sinned against God. Maybe our sin is not the same sin as David's. Maybe it's the sin of apathy, lack of involvement, temper, addiction, or even just a little white lie, as we may phrase it. But in reality, all sin is the same. It is against God. All it falls short of because we all sin. So, and when we come face to face with our sin, our excuses fall to the floor. We stand before God guilty. But the same God against whom we have sinned wants us to find him, and he wants desperately to forgive us. So how do we find God when we mess up? Something to think about. Because, again, what did we say we normally try to do? Try to hide what Adam and Eve tried to do. They tried to hide from God because they knew that they had done something they shouldn't have done. They did feel their guilt. So, as Christians, is it hard to approach someone that has sinned and let them know that they've sinned? But should we? Supposed to? It tells us that, right. But we should do it in love if that happens, right? So, but why is that a good thing? And let's talk about it. Why should we approach someone and tell them that they're
Well, the Bible tells us that if we turn the sinner from his sin, to cover the multitude of sin and save the soul.
right?
So that's why we do that, is because we're concerned for the spiritual life of an individual, not necessarily just because they are missing or whatever else. It's because their soul is held back.
Right. If they don't repent and turn from their ways. And we'll read a few more things about this in a minute. But again, we're also told if we go to talk to someone, we should go in love, but also make sure our lives are where they need to be, right? Because they're going to see a hypocrite when a hypocrite comes up to them. Well, you do this, you do that, and you're not going to them for that reason. You're going to them to try to help them make sure that they correct their wrongs, just as Nathan did against, with David. But, of course, God, told Nathan what to go say, and then Nathan approached David. And what do you think David thought? Oh, okay. I got found out. So if you want something, you need to tell me what you want, And I think David was the same way. He was getting a scenario of what happened with, taking the poor man's lamb that was a pet of the family And of course, he had a whole pastor, had no idea the prophet was talking about him. And, you know, but once he related it, like Nathan said, you are the man. And then David realized that he was the one that done exactly what Nathan was talking about.
Hey, Terry,
Yes, sir.
in that same vein, though, we don't need to be told what they want over and over and over.
Hey, I just say it's on my list down here, though. Yeah.
Reminded every 6 months.
Right. It's on my list, I've got it. Right.
A lot of men, you never know if they're listening to you.
True.
And you don't, and my husband was that way, and one time I finally, I was fed up to him. And I said, the least you can do is grunt or something, let me know you hear.
Some kind of reaction. I mean,
Any reaction, I don't care what it is.
But I mean, I don't know, in my case, it's true, so. One of the first great lessons we learned from this chapter in David's life is what not to do when we are guilty of sin. David plans to cover up his sin. Like we talked about, a lot of times we try to cover it up to make sure like it never happened, just like he did in Bathsheba's case. He had her husband killed just because, hey, that way he didn't, you know, I tried to give him a chance to go in and looked like maybe it was his baby, but, you know, he wouldn't even go in the house. He slept outside. So David's like, well, I'm going to send him to the war front, and we're going to put him right there where the hardest part of the war is going on, and, you know, make sure to withdraw from him so he is killed. And he took his own letter to that. You know, you think about that? He took his own death sentence to the field, to the captain of, you know, it's not our sin. From an early age, we learn to say what? So we're not me. So why are we taught? I mean, are we taught that, or is it ingrained in us?
They learn it early.
They know how to do bad things.
Yeah.
They learn it from us as much as from their parents and their other people.
I think that's important to think they learn it from us. Yeah.
Well, they learn it from other kids.
I think kids always want to please their parents
Yeah.
or their grandparents or whoever. Kids always want to please, but they know they do wrong and they don't want to make you sad by making those wrong choices. So a lie comes out because they don't want you to be sad, but really they're just trying, and they don't want to be in trouble also.
Right.
They don't want to.
This comment is sometimes they're not lying when they say they didn't do it. I know I had a sister that my mother said until she was 18 years old, never told a lie. Me and my older brother got into a lot of trouble because she never told a lie. Let me tell you what, that hurts, and it is scarred will stay with that kid forever.
Right.
So if they say they didn't do it, you do some detective work before you
Get on to
get on to
them.
it.
Yeah. And I think that's important as parents, but most of the time when parents ask a kid if they've done something, the parent already knows, right? Like, and Brenda can probably back this up, but like when a lot of times employees would do something they shouldn't have done, call them into the office and talk to them, pretty much you had the history of everything that went down before you talked to them, you
Well,
know?
if they hadn't been out of the office in 3 or 4 days, I don't know what's going on out there in that office. Believe you, if it's true. I've worked in too many offices.
But I mean, you know, you got records of what goes on. You got a lot of things that back up, you know, especially in the industry that we were in, because you have electronic logs, you have invoices, you got a lot of things that back things up. And, oh, I didn't do it. Okay, well, explain how this works to you. You know, we
Yeah, video, or,
I mean,
but they'll tell a lie when the truth would fit better and be better than the lie they come up with.
plus,
But adults are better at that though than kids are.
right, they are. They make up a lot of stuff.
They think they're hiding it, but you know, they're not.
And in most cases, and back me up or tell me I'm wrong, but if you tell the truth to start with, especially with the little kid and parents, aren't you more likely to, okay, well, we know we shouldn't have done that. I mean, you're still gonna get in a little trouble, but you're not in as much trouble as if you come clean to start with, right? So that's something to think about. And that's even in the world today, I would say, especially in business. Admit to what you've done. Yes, I did that. I realized I shouldn't have done X, Y, and Z because maybe it was against policy, or maybe I didn't realize that I shouldn't have done it that way, so come clean and admit it, and I think you're gonna get a lot better results when you do something wrong, because you're taking responsibility, just like David did after he was confronted with it, though, so. Our tendency is to deny our sin. From an early age. We learn to say, I didn't do it. From David, we learned two major problems with trying to cover up a sin. One, God knows, as we already talked about. And then two, the secrets have a way of reaching the surface. And how do a lot of people get caught in their crimes?
In their own lives.
Say again?
A lot of times they get caught in their own lives.
They
One lie turns into another lie, and they can't keep it all straight.
Right, that's a big part of it. Another thing too, they've got to tell somebody what they did, right? That gets out. Yeah, it was out. And now it's all on somebody's video more than likely.
Or their social media.
Or their social media. And, it's surprising how many people get caught with that now. If someone would like to turn to Numbers chapter 32 and verse 23, read that real quick. (32-23).
But if you will not do so, behold, ye have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out.
So, right there, we know that our sin will find us out. Do you remember when you were a child and your parents asked you a question whose answer they already knew, as we talked about? They didn't do that to trap you, but to get your attention. So think about this. Is that what God did with David to get his attention when he used the prophet Nathan? Because if David hadn't went and got forgiveness for his sins, what would happen? He'd have died in the sin, right? And so that's something to think about. When things happen to you because you've sinned, is God trying to get your attention so that you'll repent and change? Think about that. The story Nathan told was appalling. Why would a rich man with a pasture full of sheep steal a poor man's pet lamb to cook for company? David was horrified and demanded the man be brought to justice. The next words he heard resonated in his ears like clanging cymbals in a closed room. You are the man. Yet there is a lesson here you mustn't miss. God never would have tried to get David's attention if he did not love him. So I know that, we tell our kids, hey, if we didn't love you, we wouldn't discipline you, right? And that's kind of hard to take sometimes, especially in the position where your kid gets in trouble. But same here, it's not easy to go through consequences of our sins that happen, but yet that is leading us on so that God can take care of us and we'll have eternity with him. So something to think about. It may be hard here on this earth sometimes that we got to pay for the consequences of our sin, but yet there's more to it than that. We got to look beyond that. God does many things to get our attention. We often look at those attention getters as punishment, but in reality, he's just trying to wake us up so that we will come back to him. David's life to end. I want that for you.